Shalom, this is Daniel Stern coming at you from our buildings in Jerusalem, and today we're going to talk about whether the ceasefire with the Hamas, between Israel and the Hamas, is going to come to an explosive end or whether it will continue. There's been a lot of news about that in the last few days, and I'd like to clarify some of the issues for you. In addition, there'll also be a short update about the Supreme Court clash that we spoke about 3 or 4 videos ago. So, let's get deep into it. And as you may know, this last Saturday, 3 of the hostages were released, and they looked terrible. They looked very hungry and starved and sickly, and it was really awful. And at the same time, the Palestinian non-involved innocents were jeering at them and yelling and screaming, and if there weren't armed Hamas people there, they would have probably killed them on the spot. But anyways, that hostage release went through, and the responses around the world were very strong. Maybe the Hamas didn't realize how these hostages looked, what kind of a nerve it would strike among the Jewish people. The reminders of the Holocaust did not take long to come. And this nerve that was struck has caused a huge backlash around the world towards the treatment of these hostages, which obviously, might I remind you, are all innocent civilians kidnapped from their homes. These aren't even prisoners of war. Not that prisoners of war should be treated that way, but anyways. And consequently, Donald Trump came out and said, before anyone in Israel said anything, that the Hamas needs to release all of the prisoners by noon on Saturday. No more 3s, no more 4s, no more, but all of them by noon on Saturday, or he will unleash hell upon them. And after that statement, Israeli ministers on the right said, let's do that. We agree. This is indeed what we should do. And ministers on the left were much less interested in taking up Donald Trump's suggestion. And the cabinet itself, the Israeli government, it was unclear what it said. It released about 4 statements in a period of an hour. There was a lot of lack of clarity in the statements. But in the end, it, in a sense, also agreed. Bibi Netanyahu said, and others said, that the Hamas needs to release all the prisoners by the hostages by noon at 12 o'clock. This came, I apologize, Donald Trump's statement came after the Hamas said that they were reconsidering this coming Saturday's release of hostages as a result of what they claimed are violations of the agreement with Israel. For example, that not enough humanitarian goods were brought in, or not enough tents were brought in, or that Israel had delayed allowing the Gazan residents to go north past the Netzarim corridor, which happened as a result of Hamas not releasing one of the hostages that they had listed to release. This was already a few weeks ago, and then they released her later, and Israel allowed the Gazan residents to go north even before the release that was promised, but as a result of the agreement that it would happen. Anyways, Donald Trump made his statement, Bibi made his statement, the cabinet made their statement, and already this morning there were reports from foreign press, from Al Jazeera and from another news outlet, a Saudi news outlet, that the negotiators had managed to close the gaps and reach agreements, and that the Hamas will continue with the release of hostages 3 at a time or so. In brackets, on a side note, it's worth noting that this first stage of the agreement is nearing its conclusion. I believe there's 2 or 3 more Saturdays until it's done, and the second part of the agreement is nowhere in sight. Negotiations towards it haven't even started yet, even though they were supposed to start about a week and a half ago. In any case, As a Israeli, a Jew, a believer in Yeshua, and in general on the conservative right side of the political aisle, which I've never hidden and am proud to say I am, I believe, and have said this to you in previous videos, that this hostage negotiation, this deal is a bad one, that while every Israeli and every Jew and every human, quote unquote, in the world is in favor of hostages being returned and is yearning to have them brought back, the price that we are paying is abnormally high, is completely unreasonable, and will, not may, but will result in future casualties, terrorist attacks, October 7th, version 2.0, and so on. So, with that as the backdrop, I was against this deal and am still against it. And each time we get 3 or 4 people back, it is wonderful and praise God. But the price we pay will cause many more than 3 or 4 to die. And consequently, I would be glad if the deal ended and if Israel went back to hostilities against the Hamas, especially now with Donald Trump's new idea of removing the Gazans from the Gaza Strip. So all the more so. But even though that is my personal preference, I wish to get the hostages back, but not through this method, I don't believe it will happen. I believe that so long as the Hamas is willing to drip hostages towards Israel, Israel will continue to accept them even at these exorbitantly high prices. One of the reasons for this is that the political left in Israel will crucify Benjamin Netanyahu even more than they already are. If he were to not continue the deal, they would blame him, and not the culprits Hamas, of course, for the deaths of future hostages, for them not being released, and so on and so forth, because in the current political climate, the left is ignoring the cost of the release and is ignoring the hundreds and thousands that will die. And I say this with such sureness because history has proven that. 1,020 or so terrorists were released to receive the soldier Gilad Shalit back, and they are terrorists that even before October 7th killed hundreds, not to mention they planned and executed October 7th. So there is, and there are many more cases, the Jabril Rajub deal and many others that have been terrible for this country and has killed many, many, many more than it has saved. But that is what's going on. Donald Trump suggested a return, which at least indicates that the United States is planning to back up Israel in its future endeavors. Benjamin Netanyahu and the cabinet agreed with the suggestion, but nevertheless, I believe that the Hamas will not release all the hostages and that Israel will not break the deal and will continue with it. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll know by Saturday more on that. And I also wanted to give you a quick update on the story from a few weeks ago about the Supreme Court clashing, the judicial branch clashing with the executive branch and the legislative branch, and to say that the president of the Supreme Court was elected I mentioned this before, was elected in a non-legal gathering, which was legally needed to be called by the justice minister, needed to be assembled by the justice minister, and he didn't even attend it, let alone assemble it. And nevertheless, the vote happened. 3 members of the 9 people on the right boycotted the meeting, and 6 members voted in favor of this judge. And even though you actually need 7 members of this committee to vote on judges in the Supreme Court, apparently for this criminal to get elected, alleged criminal, then 6 was enough in a non-legal gathering. And later today, will be the ceremony to swear him in, and the justice minister, the prime minister, and the speaker of the parliament will not be in attendance. They are boycotting this ceremony. And even though legally Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, or a minister appointed to fulfill his role have to sign off on the nomination, literally sign, there will probably not be such a signature. But, you know, the courts in Israel are above the law, so it doesn't matter. They can do whatever they want because they are the dictators that control this country. So that's an update on that. Hopefully, this will push the Likud and the right and Benjamin Netanyahu to resume the judicial reform which is oh so needed in this country. Now, as always, if this interests you, please share it with anyone that you think would be interested. And if you have any comments or questions or ideas, write them below and I will try to answer. And of course, like and subscribe to get notified for more. God bless you all, and shalom.